The following episode of the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters was originally broadcast on June 14th, 2022.
Aloha and welcome to the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters radio show, sponsored by Maui Airlines. I'm your host, Pamela Timpop, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce. And today we're going to discuss affordable housing and rentals. Where is it as a state priority? What's required or should be done over the next 4 years to keep us up with the need? And then we're going to talk about the economic impact to Maui County if we do not make headway soon. We're going to hear recommendations from the construction industry of Maui for elected officials to help get affordable units built. We're going to hear the industry's concerns about the Kiva system not being currently available in the way it used to be, and hear about CIM's recent Scholarship Awards. And we're going to learn about the amazing work being done by Habitat for Humanity. But first, I'd like to extend a warm welcome and returning welcome to Paul Brewbaker. Paul is the principal of TZ Economics, a Hawaii economics consultancy. His background in research on the Hawaii economy and financial risk and analytics stems from a 25-year affiliation with Bank of Hawaii, where he concluded as its chief economist. He is a graduate of Stanford University, did graduate work at the University of Wisconsin, and received his PhD in economics from the University of Hawaii. Everybody knows Paul. If you're talking economics, he has lectured extensively in international, monetary, and financial economics. And Paul, we are always glad to have you with us. Good morning and aloha.
Good morning, Pam.
So, you know, housing is one of those things that you're always involved in. And can you tell me where you currently see affordable housing and rentals as a state priority?
I think the priority is as high as ever, but I think a lot of the efforts got in the pre-COVID, decade got caught up going down the wrong path, focused on production quotas that are called inclusionary zoning requirements. Mm-hmm. And the sad part is that as a consequence, we failed really to create opportunity for households entering the housing market, new households being formed that could have taken advantage of a extended low interest rate period of opportunity. And now, of course, that's
moving away
from us as we try to cope and deal with some of the inflation consequences of the pandemic. Yeah.
Well, that's a really good point. And I haven't heard that specific point brought up most recently. But again, this whole period of time when we've had such low interest rates and we could have been moving forward. And one of the things that I've been saying lately is people will say, well, what do you think is holding up affordable housing and rentals? And I'll say political will and funding. So, it's one of those things that how do we get off this dime?
I do think philosophically about 15 years ago, there was kind of a fork in the road, and against the contemporaneous backdrop of the subprime bubble in housing investment and in housing valuations, that led well-meaning decision makers to choose a path that involves increasingly onerous regulatory requirements of developers to produce a certain kind of housing or a certain mix of housing, notably exempting, by the way, wealthy individuals who could build whatever they want. The burden of the regulate. Well, they're
very
rich,
true.
Right?
That's right.
The difference between rich and normal people, they have money.
Right.
But the developers who, even those like Stanford Carr, who's originally a Maui boy and actively and consistently have engaged in affordable housing development over the decades now, bore the burden of these regulatory requirements of increasing proportions of what they were intending to build, that they be channeled into specific price ranges that are associated with certain income thresholds. And that sort of inflexibility makes it much more complicated to raise the capital and to deploy it efficiently or profitably.
Right.
Whereas the alternative path, which is sort of the have faith and the willingness and ability of developers like Stanford to build what the market needs, has slipped into the backdrop, and now I think in the last decade largely been abandoned. I don't think developers are seen as people even engaged in the public good. Usually, seen as rapacious,
yes,
profit-oriented architects of doom.
It's one of those things that we deal with a lot, and especially when we listen to testimony. And as you point out, I mean, people are sort of demonizing our developers and acting as if everything's really greedy, not understanding the economics and the holding costs and, all these things that developers have to incur for years and years and years as they wait to get opportunities to move projects forward, get their permits and things. And it's a time where we're really trying to change it, but that just even those sentiments continue to hold us back.
Yeah, time is not a friend of developers, and when you're talking decades to acquire the entitlement to build, and then even when you believe you have the entitlement to build, to be disallowed for ad hoc or frivolous reasons, or subject to continuing lawsuits, suggests that the process itself is no longer working in the public interest. I mean, it's just a constant merry-go-round of conflict and litigation. And honestly, I mean, I'm not that old, but when I was a kid and I came back to Hawaii, there were still a lot of small developers around. And in my banking career, which, by the way, I need to change that bio. I had a great professional experience at Bank of Hawaii, and I love those guys. But I should stop, talking about it. But as a commercial,
well, you did work there and had a great you were the chief economist.
Well, I shouldn't ride on that, say. But look, the industry has changed, and there were a lot of small independent developers around that just don't exist anymore. What's happened is the nature of the way that the industry is regulated relegates home building in material numbers, outside the scope of the one-off, the spec house. There's still people that do that. As I say, concentrated at the high end of the valuation spectrum. But the small developers that kind of the wildcatters that were around back in the day are been driven out of the market. They can't afford the carrying costs that we were just talking about. It's just you can't carry a project for 10 or 20 years or more waiting to get the approval, which when acquired turns out not even to be an approval. Turns out you're still subject to some kind of litigation or
add-ons. As we get closer in the approval process and applications have been in, we also see here in Maui County new requirements imposed in the council review. So, and people are being asked, can you do this, yes or no, on the spot when they're not at their desk and penciling things out. And of late, we've heard a number of people say no, and especially now with the inflationary measures, with the supply costs going up, they're saying we can't do any numbers on the spot these days. It's getting tough.
Yeah, the recent supply chain disruptions and inflation in construction materials costs that are a consequence of those disruptions, which by definition are transitory in nature. They've appeared over the last year. They'll probably fade over the next year or few. But and the reason being that high construction materials prices lead the producers of those materials to produce more of them, which then tends to attenuate their prices. But that production response, of course, has been hung up by the persistence of the pandemic itself. And in many parts of the world where we source materials, whether natural resource originating or manufactured, many places around the world, including Hawaii, have continued to be subjected to ongoing waves of COVID infection that shut down factories or have just disarticulated global logistics and inventory management, all that stuff we've been hearing about. As I say, that most of those things will fade, but in the meantime, an environment in which production costs are rising on the material side and interest rates are rising in mortgage lending on both the supply side of home building as well as the demand side, the potential buyer market, are under pressure, are being pushed back. And for millennials, for the new home buying generation, who, as I say, emerged in the last decade in a period of historically low mortgage interest rates, the current monetary policy response to the inflation, to the more permanent or potentially persistent part of the inflation, not the transitory part on the supply side. That monetary policy response, which will probably involve in coming days validation of an expectation that short-term interest rates will be moved higher, has led longer-term interest rates to their highest points in a decade. Mm-hmm. And as I say, an entire generation of home buyers is being asked to press the pause button in terms of opportunity. That right. comes, the difference between a 3% mortgage rate and a 5% mortgage rate.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. So this is a good jumping off point for, over the next 4 years, it's an election year, and everybody's going to be talking about affordable housing and rentals. What do you see as being priority issues and the critical focus that needs to be done so that we are keeping up with this desperate need over the next 4 years in these critical times?
I hate to say it, a lot of us, in economics, and people that know a little housing economics, have kind of checked out. The literature has reached a fairly definitive conclusion that the regulation of the supply side of the housing market is the reason housing hasn't been available, and the solution is just to build more of it. Now, I understand if communities find it challenging to determine where and under what parameters housing should be built, but the bottom line is that more of it needs to be built, and it's not.
Right.
So that's been pretty firmly established. 20 years ago, there was still some debate about sort of the nuances and the details of housing regulation. But at this point, it's pretty clear that it's the regulation that killed home building, not people's lack of desire to own a home. We're at an interesting juncture, not just in terms of political transition, but in terms of demographic transition. And the fact that the population is aging in most Western advanced societies, but elsewhere, even in emerging markets, there's been a demographic transition, a diminution of fertility to follow the diminution of mortality that occurred beginning maybe a century ago. That transition is largely complete, and the various age cohorts, however you carve them up, older folks versus younger adults, are in a more stable arrangement. And indeed, old age dependency most places is rising, not falling, as it was, say, during the baby boom era in mid-20th century.
Mm-hmm.
As a consequence of that, the houses live longer than people.
Yes.
and as for Maui, what that means is, as we move away from Maui as a place to which people migrate, which was true in the coming out of the mid-20th century, the 60s, maybe through the 90s, but definitely into the 80s, people moved to Maui, and then on top of that tailwind was the natural increase that came from higher fertility a half century ago. But those two forces are gone largely. In fact, Maui may have lost population in the last year or two,
mm-hmm.
and we're waiting to see census revisions. But if the population is not growing, then you don't need as many houses as when it was. The problem is we didn't supply the houses we needed when it was growing, when households were being formed by young persons or younger adults, and that ship has pretty much sailed. So the irony is, as people continue to talk about the housing crisis, and well-meaning people continue to come up with creative solutions, and there's a multiplicity of them. The fact is that the bodies aren't going to be there in another 10 or certainly 30 years. And so depending on how we allow the economy to move forward, and we're not, right? We dismantle telescopes in Hawaii. We don't build telescopes in Hawaii. In that kind of an economy where you're de-industrializing, where the tourism authority officially is committed to reducing the tourism, to reducing the number of tourists, the principal export, when the overall or overarching economic policy agenda is economic decline as opposed to economic growth, then why would you build more houses? And that's sort of a dilemma we face right now. The organic growth of households has diminished or is diminishing in this decade to a flow that may not even require the kinds of houses, in numbers that we should have been building for the last decade or two. But those people are gone. They left.
Right.
They're not still living with their parents waiting for politicians to solve a 20 or 30-year-old housing problem. They're gone.
Right.
And that's actually a discussion, if not a debate, we ought to be having. What do we do now if everybody left?
Right. Right. What does the new projection look like? Yeah,
what are the new population projections? Do we actually project that there are going to be more people in Maui County?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the last thing I kind of want to talk about, and we're touching on it right here, is, what is the economic impact of Maui County if we don't make more significant headway? And then you bring in these changing dynamics that now, the model is always evolving, but it's getting more complicated and that point. And actually, I thought you were also going to say that with our aging population, we're going to have people in homes longer than they used to be in homes, and they're not turning over as quickly.
Well, sure. We baby booms aren't dying as fast as we're supposed to, so we're not abandoning the homes we've been glommed onto. We've been glomming onto for the last couple of decades, while millennials and whatever gen comes next are, literally knocking at the door going, are you going to move out? Are you going to move into a nursing home? I mean, what's up? What are you doing? What are you still doing here? And that, it's all of the above. I mean, people live longer. They're living healthier lives. They're not having to move into institutionalized settings as much. And of course, most people aspire to continue to live in a house, in a setting that they've had, for many years. So anyway, put all that together, and the future is a little uncertain. I mean, we don't drive ferries to islands in Hawaii. We don't even have boats. You know what I mean? We shot that one down. We decided we don't want to do biotech in Hawaii. And I made a wisecrack about the telescope thing, but it's pretty clear that nobody's ever going to build another telescope in Hawaii, that we're done with astronomy. We're done with science and technology and engineering and mathematics-based industry in Hawaii. That's right. Message received.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that. And now that post-COVID, everybody's got Zoom, and we realize we can live anywhere we want. The smart kids can live and work anywhere they want. And living and working do not require that you be in the same place. The smart kids can be anywhere they want. So that additional wrinkle now in the labor market, which is, the separation of habitation and workplace environments, for, as I say, the smart kids, for maybe 20% of the population, which has the occupational ability, the skills, and the educational attainment to enjoy that opportunity. That part of the workforce, which pre-COVID, only a few years ago, was a very relatively small part of the workforce, is having an impact now on the tenor of the housing market. You want to understand why home prices have been doing what they're doing in the last couple of years, or since 2 summers ago. It's because the smart kids are moving around. They're optimizing their housing choices in a world in which they may never have to go back to an office again. And so that, I know people have been concerned about a bubble, and things did have a bubblicious quality over the last 18 months or so, or maybe 18 months. I think it really petered out at the end of last year. We were sort of coasting on the momentum in the first half of this year, but now, of course, mortgage interest rates have changed that picture, and I think that particular adjustment is over. Everybody's busted the moves that they were going to move, and we're back to the core problem of not building enough houses. And now the dilemma looking forward is that we may not have, so many people. We still have the backlog of need, but we're not popping out babies, and they're not moving here, and we're a country that a significant political portion of, America doesn't want people to move here from anywhere.
Right.
Even the smart kids. So that's, that's where we're at. That's the 2020s. Welcome to the post-pandemic. Either the roaring 20s or the boring 20s. I don't know which. And that's what a lot of people are debating in political forums today.
Wow, Paul. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and I'd love to have you on again soon. You are a treasure trove of information and history and forward thinking, and we cherish your insight and input, and really appreciate you being on and sharing that with us.
Shucks, Pam. No, it's great to share a conversation with you again, Pam.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Well, you have a great Maui day.
Mahalo.
Mahalo. All right, we'll be right back after a brief message from our sponsor, Mokulele Airlines.
Mokulele Airlines operates the largest commuter airline hub in the country, right here in Kahului. Fly Mokulele from Kahului to Molokai, Lanai, Hana, Waimea, Kona, and now Hilo. Mokulele also operates the only flights between Kapalua and Honolulu. There is never a middle seat on Mokulele, and every seat has a window and aisle. Visit mokuleleairlines.com and take your next flight from the newly renovated Mokulele Terminal.
And we're back. If you're tuning in, this is Business Matters, brought to you by the Maui Chamber of Commerce. And I'd now like to welcome Josh Berlien, owner of Berlien Consulting, LLC. His company specializes in strategic development of contractors and construction management services. He is also the chairman of the Construction Industry of Maui, which is a trade council of the Maui Chamber of Commerce. Good morning, Josh. It's great to have you on the show again.
Good morning, Pam. How are you today?
I am excellent. How are you?
I'm doing just delightful. I've had my 2 cups of coffee, and I am ready to go.
Ready to rock and roll. Well, you're ahead of me, but coffee will come after the show. But thank you so much for being up and ready to rock and roll. You know, we've been talking a little bit about affordable housing and rentals with Paul Brewbaker, and we're at this critical point, and I'm wondering from the construction industry of Maui's perspective, it's an election year. What are some of the messages that you'd like both state and county elected officials to hear so that we can get more units urgently built?
Boy, that's a loaded question. It is definitely at a critical point. I feel like every time I go out to a project job site or even down the road to talk to neighbors in my own neighborhood, more and more people are leaving for a culmination of reasons. If we could go back in time, we've over-restricted ourselves, and we've really caused a lot of this upon our own community. And over the past few years, our CIM organization has really been vocal, and in the past year, we did get, I think, some good reception from our elected leaders. And our position has always been that the county and or state needs to quit being a hindrance and more of a project partner. Put some skin in the game. We load projects with requirements of developers to the point that they just don't pencil out, and they're extremely risky and a headache to even try to put together and ultimately get shot down. And in the past year, we've seen Mayor Victorino really listen, and he's taken positive steps to that end goal of the public-private partnership. And I think the most recent one we've seen is the Waikapu Town Center development.
Yeah.
That's a huge milestone in the right direction. Now, going forward, the CIM, to zoom in on the micro, we're just one little cog in a huge economic wheel. There's certain things that we can control as an industry through improved productions, and that helps keep the costs down on the build side.
Right.
We cannot control commodities, how that price fluctuates. That's market-driven, and that is what it is. Now, looking ahead, and this is my recommendation, is to stay a step ahead so that we're proactively dealing with the situation instead of being in this reactive state that we're in right now of a housing crisis. The next issue that's coming is we do have some affordable projects, quite a few of them, in progress or about to put a shovel in the ground. My concern is that we've seen a lot of off-island folks buy up real property here for a number of reasons. They want to move to Maui and work remotely, or they see it as a place to safeguard their money with a volatile market, and ultimately they'll pull it out when the time is right. There's quite a few variables. But on the horizon, what worries me is that to combat inflation, when interest rates are risen, what's being built is affordable now. When this project comes to fruition and people are ready to purchase these affordables, right, is the interest rate alone going to really price a lot of people out of the market?
Right.
And I like to have some wild, off-the-wall ideas because a lot of times that's where we find, maybe the diamond in the rough. It is something that could be a plan. I don't know if there's a way for either state or county to create something like a rent-to-own program, but my vision tells me that we got a problem coming with interest rates that are going to price a lot of people out of the market of what is now considered affordable.
Very, very good point. Recently, the county has been really moving swiftly forward with the MAPS program. It's a program that's been, light at the end of a tunnel that we've been working towards to get this going, so we can have better access to varieties of levels of construction information. But the prior system was known as Kiva, and a lot of people are struggling now to. The way we have to find it is to contact somebody at the office and gain access to it. And I've understood from a number of the CIM members there's great concerns on why we can't have Kiva available now. Can you share kind of a quick overview of the member concerns about Kiva and what they'd like to see?
Sure. My understanding is that when the MAPS program was rolled out, the history that is in Kiva was going to be preserved in a read-only format. And Kiva has now disappeared. It's just not there anymore. And I've spent a little bit of time using maps for some of my own research purposes for upcoming projects. And I truly do see the potential and the power of the MAPS program when it's fully integrated and all the information is there. You go on the county tax records and you got links. Would you like to look up all permit history for this project? Yes, I would, and it's one click away. That's a tremendous integration for doing research on a property. The submittal process for building permits, I'm not fully up to speed on how that's going from the A&E side, the architects, the engineers. So I can't comment on that, but that intent is to take away the hard copy, submit your 6 plans, and then they get shuffled around for departments. We're going to have a electronic review where agencies can do review concurrently, and the intent is to streamline and speed up the review process. Now, from the contractor point of view, the back end is that when a project's going, inspection requests and inspection statuses. You go into Kiva on a project, and the history of inspections, whether it be a building permit inspection or plumbing or electrical, the status is there. Pass, fail, final, it's all there. That information isn't there anymore. And it's caused a hiccup in our industry of the requesting inspections, and that is kind of the delta that needs to be buttoned up real quick with maps to help keep projects going so that they don't have standby time of no matter weeks where they can't get an inspection. That was the biggest hurdle with this maps rollout for our industry.
Well, I really appreciate that because, what I keep hearing is if we could just draw a line in the sand and say, for right now, okay, this information right now is available in maps moving forward, but if we could get the Kiva information up and people could access that historical information, it would be a tremendous help. And recognizing that we do also recognize that Kiva information doesn't necessarily port over easily or at all, possibly, to the new system, but wanting to find a solution to make sure that it's still available, it's still online, still searchable, even in a historical capacity. Would that suffice for CIM? Is what I'm looking.
Yes, and it's we get it. It's a process. The amount of information that would have to be carried over from Kiva to maps, it is extraordinary, the amount of information that needs to be crossed over. Go back in time. I don't know if that process should have started a year earlier before the rollout, but I'm sure the county, they have some tremendous people up there working on this. We're all in the construction industry. We're used to nothing going perfect, and we adapt. So we'll ultimately adapt and move forward, right. And it's going to be a great program.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think all of us, everybody has learned to adapt through COVID. We're getting to be really good at adapting. One of the other things, Josh, I just had the great pleasure, and thank you so much. It was great to be invited to and come to CIM's Scholarship Awards program. And you folks are really looking forward to future generations and helping to create, helping people, our youth, look at the construction industry, create opportunities for them in the construction industry, and supporting their educational programs. So can you tell us a little bit, we've got a few minutes here, about 4 minutes, but could you tell us a little bit about the awards this year and who won? And I know it's in a couple of short sentences, a little highlights about the winners.
So before talking about the large scholarships that we gave, our industry is twofold. Well, it's made up of a lot of professionals to make everything work. The meat and potatoes are the professionals that come more from the academic side, and then we also have the trades. And without the trades, we got no product.
Right.
So we are helping to build up the shortage of skilled workers, and we're doing that with, raise your hand, who's in the audience, who has a tremendous young star that needs to fill their tool bag, and we're handing out gift cards to local supply houses so that they can get power tools. Those are expensive, and anything to offset that cost and stimulate our trades, we are doing that. With the scholarships for our young adults in our community going to a 4-year higher education program, we gave out 2 scholarships this year, each $20,000.
Yes.
Our 2 recipients were Mari Yamamoto and Caleb Fernandez, both recent graduates of Maui High. Mari is going to Oregon State, and she's pursuing architecture and construction management. Caleb is going to go to Arizona State, and he's going to go for engineering. The whole vision of this program is to give the opportunity to our Maui kids to go out and get the best education in the world. And then the key is then they bring it back here so that we're stocking our own Maui pond with professionals from Maui that have Maui at their heart, and then one day they rise to be in a leadership decision-making position. The other actually goes back to the housing situation. My dream is that we drum up enough money where we can pay for 2 kids' college in its entirety. And then when those kids come back, they have an advantage in life because in their 20s, when they're starting their professional career, they're not paying down a student debt that is a burden that impacts life decisions. They can save that money, and then they're in a much better position to purchase a house and compete on the global market from Maui.
Yes. It's a beautiful vision. And what's most amazing is you folks are doing it. And these are really big scholarships for our youth here in Maui County. I'm just floored. I understand that Ray Michaels was at another program, and a lot of the CIM scholarships were a major chunk of their entire scholarship program.
Yeah, he got invited to Maui High's presentation banquet.
Yeah.
And, I may be off a little bit, but I think a total of maybe $65,000 or $75,000 was given out over 20 different scholarships. The CIM was $40,000 of that.
Right,
and
that's amazing.
That was given to 2 kids.
Yeah, tremendous.
We do have the conversations of should we spread the wealth, and I totally get that. I also get the impact of making a huge, huge impact on 2 young individuals' life and giving them the front row seat to succeed, especially when the Maui kids coming back to Maui. Those are our kids.
That's right. No, it's a tremendous program. I think you guys are on such a phenomenal path. And I just want to encourage all who are listening, all of the schools, think of your youth and learn about the Construction Industry of Maui Scholarship Program. Josh, tell everybody where they can find more information. We want parents, teachers, everybody who's youth programs, everybody who is working with our youth, and we have children interested in the trades or interested in getting their education in the construction industry to take advantage of the opportunities offered by CIM. So where can they get that, Josh?
Our website is CIMMaui.com. We have a section on our scholarship. We generate these funds at our holiday party, which is in November, and that's when we shake down all our members and really guilt trip them into come on, it's for the kids, and it works well. And then at the start of the next calendar year, so it would be spring semester for these students, is when we start promoting. And, we get great publicity. So, those notifications, you usually see them, like Maui Now, Lahaina News, and the Maui News. They give us some publicity to help get the word out.
Awesome.
Our deadline is typically at the beginning of May. So right about the time these kids are about ready to graduate, and if they're going on to a 4-year degree, they're pretty much all set in and ready to go. So we look for the compelling essay, we look for their grades and letters of recommendation, and then make the award at the end of May.
Fantastic. All right, everybody. Make sure you're thinking May. Get ready for looking at this program, but start now. We want the kids to do the research earlier, and so that they're ready in May. Josh, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We appreciate getting a construction industry of Maui update and your thoughts on how we can move positively forward.
Thank you very much, Pam. You have a wonderful day.
I will. You do the same. Aloha and mahalo.
Aloha.
All right. Our next guest is Sherri Dodson. Sherri is the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity Maui. She was the first Executive Director hired and has helped guide the organization to completing over 100 homes in 16 years. She graduated from the University of Hawaii with a BA in Political Science with an emphasis on Hawaiian Studies. She then continued her education at Western State Law School and graduated with a JD in 1986. Aloha and good morning, Sherri. How are you?
Good morning. I think that bio has to be updated.
Well, we'll be having you on again, so send us an update. Are you thinking the number of homes being completed?
Number of homes, how long I've been doing this. Yeah.
The whole thing. Okay, well, good. We're going to talk about that. So, Habitat has been doing amazing work and really getting people into housing. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today, because we've been talking about priority, we see extreme need. We're hearing some other interesting things about outmigration that over time may change our numbers, but we're still in a crisis state. And one of the things we always look at is where the will is and where the funding is. What could Habitat for Humanity achieve if there were additional resources available specifically to your organization for expansion?
Well, certainly money helps because it helps us buy land and buy building materials because we finance every house that we build.
Right.
But it takes so much more than just money. If you're still waiting 6 to 7 months for a permit, if you can't find land that neighbors want you to build on, so there's got to be a concerted effort, not just with more money for Habitat. Certainly, the money helps in subsidizing the houses so that we can make them more affordable for the income group that we serve. But getting, I'm in the process of trying to hire a project manager right now. Mm-hmm. And I've been trying to do that for 3 months, and I can't find anybody. So, getting CIM, helps with getting people into the trades. And then, getting them to want to work for a nonprofit and do the work that we do is very, very difficult. So we're struggling with that right now. So unless we, certainly additional money could help us pay more and get maybe some candidates. But for the most part, people would rather work for a big company where there's, the potential to make a lot more money. So there's a lot of problems and a lot of, barriers to us building faster and more homes.
Yeah, and I do agree that it's money is a tool, but also, as you point out, the resources. And we were talking with Paul Brewbaker, and one of the things that he mentioned this morning, and you mentioned that you subsidize, you do the financing and subsidize the housing. He was mentioning that, of course, right now we've sort of really missed a window, right? We had such low interest rates for such a long period of time, and now they're on the rise. Can you tell us about how, what impact that'll have on your programs, and a little bit about the financing and how you help people get into homes and the group that you focus on?
Yes, we serve 80% and below median income. These people all, are working, have jobs, but they may not make a lot of money at those jobs, or they're single parents. We are a mortgage company, so we actually issue mortgages. We are a loan servicer, so we service the mortgage. We are a licensed construction company, and we are a HUD-certified housing counselor. So when someone comes to us, they first get housing counseling, and we make sure that they qualify for the program. And then they do sweat equity on building the house. And then once the house is built, we issue a mortgage at a 0% interest. So the interest rates really don't affect us very much, except that we become a really good deal when there's high interest rates.
I was going to say, this is going to be really, this is where maybe more money into your program could help, because from what we were talking about today, soon we could be looking at a new wave that will take people who otherwise would have qualified out of qualification.
Yeah, absolutely. Interest is a big portion of your mortgage typically. So when you eliminate that from the mortgage, when you use, volunteer labor to help build the home so that it is less expensive, then it becomes affordable. We believe that nobody should pay more than 30% for their housing costs. So that is what we charge people. Whether the house actually, may be worth a lot more, the subsidy is the difference between what they can afford to pay and what the cost of the house is.
Right. How helpful are you seeing? We've continued to put some money into the Maui County's Affordable Housing Fund. That's something the Chamber has always supported, because we want to see the money getting out and being used. How are you seeing this fund working? And are we getting the funding out fast enough, or do you have any ideas on how we can better leverage the Maui County's Affordable Housing Fund? And can it work in conjunction with your program?
Yeah, we have definitely taken advantage of the Affordable Housing Fund many times, practically every cycle, except for the last couple cycles. Our last project, the Kahoma project, was subsidized by the Affordable Housing Fund as well as home funds. The fund definitely works. It is a pot of money that you can go to for bridge financing or for subsidies. They keep changing it, so that's always a concern, right? When you know what the parameters are of the fund and what it can be used for and what the restrictions are, then it gets changed, and so it's a little difficult for, let's say, somebody who hasn't had a lot of experience with the fund coming in and trying to figure out how to get the money and how to access it and how to build with it. I think all the other counties are super jealous that we have this affordable housing fund.
Yes.
All my cohorts around the state, how did you get this done? I said, it's done quite a few years ago, and it has done a lot of good work. It has built a lot of housing. I think it can be expanded and used for, funding homeowner education. I am a huge component of getting people housing ready and keeping them ready. It's one thing to go to an 8-hour class with financial literacy and homeowner education and then not be followed up with, because all of us fall into bad habits again. So the money could definitely help the head housing counselors continue to support the families that we serve.
We always hear in affordable housing projects these pre-qualification lists, and again, people are on these lists for years, and so they're pre-qualified then, but maybe they buy a new vehicle, or they change jobs, or they exit the workforce for one reason or another, and the dynamics then have completely changed, right at a time when they could be getting housing. So that continued follow-up is we hear it over and over again, such a key component. So I think that's a great recommendation. You also talked about, again, permitting, and we've been 3 times. You're the third one today. We've heard permitting and the regulation. What do you see? We've got a couple of minutes. What do you see as the regulatory environment or other things that we should be looking at doing to more expeditiously get more affordable housing and rentals built?
So when people ask me that question, I say, get out of the way. That's the easiest.
Amen.
I think with permitting, they have this great idea that, special folder if you're affordable and it should go on the top of the list. But I think just having one person who is designated at the county to handle all affordable projects, so they know exactly what's going on. They know a lot about the affordable housing provider, so they don't have to research every time it comes in. And that person would be dedicated to helping with permits, helping, navigate through other departments, kind of like an expediter. Contractors use expediters a lot, but this person would just be an expediter for affordable housing providers. I think that would help a lot with the permitting side of it.
That's a really great solution. How many people are in that mix now, approximately?
In the permitting process right now?
I mean, yeah, kind of handling all of the different projects that are coming in.
There's the permit clerks. They're very, very nice and very helpful, but certainly they are overworked. And it's not just the permitting clerks, because then it goes to the water department, and then it goes to, all the different departments to get signed off on.
Right.
So it's a mesh of people, and it changes constantly. I just heard, and this may or may not be true, that there's no engineers right now in the water department.
Yeah.
They've all left.
We've been hearing lots of that, yeah.
Yeah, so when you have to go through water and get it signed off, there's nobody there to sign off on it. So what do we do?
Yep, this is at a critical point. Well, we've talked about they can outsource that as well, right? We need to get engineering
Absolutely.
reviews. Yeah. Sherri, it's always a great pleasure to have you on the show with us. Thank you for sharing these ideas. Today sort of didn't necessarily start out that way, but it's been a great affordable housing and rental discussion day, and we appreciate you being a part of it.
Well, we appreciate the Chamber continuing to advocate for housing for all, not just for low income.
It's our pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Aloha, everyone. That is all the time we have for today's Business Matters, sponsored by Mokulele Airlines. I'm Pamela Tumpop, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce, wishing you blessings and best wishes for a beautiful Maui day. Ahui ho.